Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're tackling a really significant development in India, the rise in women's participation in the workforce.
That's right. It's quite a jump we've seen.
Yeah, I mean, going from 23.2% up to 41.7% over just 6 years, that's substantial.
It really is. And for our listeners, especially those preparing for the UPSC exams, this is a topic you absolutely need to get your head around.
Definitely. It touches on economics, social change, policy, pretty much core syllabus territory for mains and prelims.
Exactly. So our mission today is to, unpack what's really driving this increase. But also, crucially, look at the hurdles that still exist. It's about getting to genuine women-led development, not just higher numbers.
And we're drawing our analysis mainly from the business standard for this deep dive.
Correct.
Okay, so let's start with the drivers. What are the main engines behind this shift?
Well, a huge part of it, arguably the foundation, is education. We're seeing more women not just enrolling, but completing higher education.
And that's translating into different kinds of jobs.
Precisely. We're seeing a breakdown of some traditional barriers. Women are increasingly entering STEM fields: science, tech, engineering, math.
Which often means better paying jobs.
Right.
And more innovation potential.
Spot on. And this creates a kind of positive feedback loop, doesn't it?
How so?
Well, you see more women succeeding in these fields. It raises aspirations for others. They invest in skills. They become more workforce ready. It's a virtuous cycle.
Makes sense. And things like online learning must be helping too.
Absolutely. Digital education, more scholarships. They're democratizing access, reaching women who might have been left out before.
Do we have numbers on that?
We do. Female enrollment in higher education hit 2.07 crore in 2021-22. That's nearly half the total.
Wow, almost parity.
Almost.
Yeah.
And importantly, over 42% of STEM students are now women. That's a fundamental shift.
Okay, so education is key. But it feels like there's been a government push too.
Definitely. There's been a clear evolution in policy, moving away from just women's welfare towards women-led development.
What's the difference in practice?
It's about seeing women as active agents, leaders, entrepreneurs, decision makers, not just recipients of aid.
Right, more proactive.
Exactly. And the policies are trying to be more intersectional, recognizing that women from different backgrounds face different challenges. Plus, better coordination between ministries helps.
Can you give some examples of these policies?
Sure. Look at the National Rural Livelihood Mission, NRLM. It's connected 10 crore women through about 9 million self-help groups, or SHGs.
That's huge grassroots mobilization.
It is, providing savings, credit, a base for entrepreneurship. Then there's Stand Up India. 84% of its loans went to women entrepreneurs.
Directly funding women-led businesses.
Yes. And even something like the Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana Gramin, the housing scheme, prioritizing ownership in the woman's name or jointly, it strengthens their position in the household.
That's a subtle but important point about asset ownership.
It really is.
And we're seeing more women actually starting businesses, becoming job creators.
That's another vital piece. The startup ecosystem is seeing more women step up.
What's enabling that?
Several things. Digital platforms, better financial inclusion, access to mentoring networks. It's all coming together.
And having visible role models must help, like Falguni Nair at Nika.
Absolutely. Her, Shruta Sharma from your story, Papasana Taku at MobiQuick. Their success challenges norms and inspires others. It fosters a more gender-aware ecosystem.
Is there specific funding support too?
Yes. SIDB, the Small Industries Development Bank of India, now earmarks over 10% of its fund specifically for women-led startups. That's a concrete commitment.
Okay, you mentioned financial inclusion. How big a factor is that on its own?
It's massive. Access to formal banking, digital financial tools, it gives women economic control.
Which boosts confidence.
Definitely. In business decisions, household decisions, and digital banking, Aadhaar services, mobile wallets, they reduce dependency, integrate women into the formal economy. Fintech is really a gateway here.
And the numbers reflect that.
They do. Women now hold nearly 40% of bank accounts and deposits.
That's significant progress.
And look at investing. Female-owned demat accounts tripled between 2021 and 2024.
So greater engagement with financial markets too.
Right. And even grassroots models like the Bank Saki's community banking agents, they processed something like $40 million back in 2020. It shows reach.
Alongside finance, what about the legal side? Safer workplaces, better protections?
Crucial. Robust legal frameworks are essential for workplace safety, which helps retention. Think stronger maternity benefits, mechanisms to tackle gender-based violence.
So things like the Sexual Harassment of Women at Workplace Act.
Exactly. Plus, the fast-track courts, the one-stop centers for support, more women's help desks in police stations, they provide institutional assurance. That sense of security is vital.
And the numbers there.
Around 750 fast-track courts, over 800 one-stop centers are functional now, and more than 14,000 women help desks. It shows an effort to build that supportive infrastructure.
Technology also seems like a double-edged sword, but the rise of remote work must be helping.
Without a doubt. Digital transformation has opened up remote work, which is a huge deal for balancing professional and domestic roles. A classic barrier for women.
The gig economy, too. Platform work.
Yes, they offer flexibility, overcoming traditional constraints like travel time or fixed hours. Women can access national, even global markets from home.
Any examples of tech enabling women at the grassroots?
Well, think about the common service centers, those digital access points in rural areas.
Yeah.
Around 67,000 are run by women entrepreneurs. That's tech penetration, empowering women directly.
And finally, just the broader social shift. Seeing women in diverse roles.
Hugely important. Role models matter. When you see women commanding warships, like Commander Prerna Diastole,
The first woman to command an Indian naval warship, right?
yes, in 2023, or Justice B.V. Nagaratna potentially becoming the first woman Chief Justice of India, it reshapes societal attitudes.
And pilots. I read India has a high percentage of women pilots.
It does, around 15%, which is apparently 3 times the global average. So from defense to the judiciary to boardrooms, increased visibility inspires younger generations and normalizes female ambition and leadership.
Okay, so those are some powerful forces driving change. But let's be real, challenges remain. Big ones.
Absolutely. We can't ignore the other side of the coin.
The biggest one maybe being that the overall participation rate, despite the rise, is still quite low.
Exactly. 41.7% is a big improvement on 23%, but it's still way behind men's 77.2%. And it's below the global average for women, which is around 50%.
Why is that gap still so persistent?
Well, deep-rooted societal norms are still a major factor. Lack of truly flexible jobs, and crucially, the massive burden of unpaid care work.
Yes, second shift.
Precisely. Many women drop out after marriage or childbirth, and getting back in is tough.
Let's talk more about that unpaid care work. It's often invisible in economic data, isn't it?
Completely invisible in standard GDP metrics, yet it underpins everything. Women carry a hugely disproportionate load of domestic chores, childcare, elder care.
Which leaves less time for
education, for skilling, for paid employment, for leisure, for anything else. And it reinforces those traditional gender roles.
Is there data on the time spent?
Yes. The time use survey is stark. Women spend, on average, 236 minutes a day on unpaid domestic work. Men, just 24 minutes.
Wow, that's a huge disparity.
It's enormous, and it directly limits economic opportunities.
Then there's the pay gap. Even when women work, they often earn less.
That's another persistent issue. The gender pay gap is significant, especially in the informal sector and rural areas where most women work.
And informal work means less security, fewer benefits.
Exactly. Low pay, insecurity, no social safety net. This disparity in wages also discourages women from staying in the workforce or investing in skills.
What kind of pay gap are we talking about?
NSSO data suggests men earn about 29.4% more than women in urban areas and a staggering 51.3% more in rural areas.
Over 50% more.
Yes, and remember, around 81% of working women are in that informal sector.
And tragically, safety remains a huge concern. Gender-based violence.
A major barrier. Fear of violence in public spaces, on commutes, even at home, restricts women's mobility, their choices about education, about work. It's psychologically and economically disempowering.
And the justice system.
Often slow, and underreporting is still a massive issue. The official stats are grim enough. The NCRB reported over 4.4 lakh crimes against women in 2022.
Yeah.
That's 51 cases every hour.
Every hour.
And NFHS 5 found nearly 30% of married women aged 1849 had experienced spousal violence. It's pervasive.
We also see underrepresentation in leadership, right?
Right.
Despite gains in local government.
Yes, that's a critical point. We have reservations in panchayats, which has brought many women into local politics, but that hasn't really translated to state legislatures or parliament.
What's the current Lok Sabha figure?
Only 13.6% women in the 18th Lok Sabha. And in the corporate world, women hold only about 17.6% of directorships in Nifty 500 companies.
So decisions are still largely made by men.
Overwhelmingly. And that impacts policy, corporate culture,
Yeah.
everything. We talk about the glass ceiling, but there's also the glass cliff phenomenon.
Yeah, where women get leadership roles mainly in crisis situations.
Exactly, increasing their risk of failure. It's another subtle barrier.
And the digital divide. We talked about tech as an enabler, but access isn't equal.
No, it isn't. While literacy is rising, there's still a gender gap in actually accessing digital tools, phones, internet, digital finance, especially in rural areas.
Which holds women back from leveraging those online opportunities.
Right. It reinforces exclusion. NFHS 5 data showed only 33% of rural women use the internet versus 57% of men. And phone ownership is still around 54% for women.
Finally, basic workplace infrastructure, or the lack of it.
Yes, things we might take for granted. Lack of safe, clean toilets, affordable, reliable childcare, safe transport. These practical issues discourage participation.
And balancing work and life.
Still incredibly difficult without adequate maternity leave, flexible hours, or support systems. It forces women to choose. One survey found 1 in 4 working women had to pick between childcare and career.
And company policies often lag behind.
Significantly, data suggests 37% of organizations still don't offer proper maternity leave, and only about 17.5% provide childcare facilities. That's just not good enough.
Okay, so a complex picture. Significant progress, but major hurdles remain. Looking forward, what are the key measures needed to really push forward?
We need a multi-pronged approach, really. One key area is integrating skilling much better with local economies.
Meaning?
Meaning figure out where the jobs are locally, green jobs, healthcare, digital services, and train women for those jobs. Then provide actual support for placements or starting a business, not just training in isolation.
Like Kerala's Kudumbashree model.
Exactly. That's a great example of community-based, demand-driven empowerment. We need district-level, gender-smart skill plans.
Makes sense. What about supporting the women entrepreneurs we talked about?
We need to scale that up. Link different loan schemes together, provide serious hand-holding business plans, digital skills, getting them onto platforms like GEM for government procurement.
Using SHGs as incubators.
Yes, and promoting things like joint liability lending, peer mentoring to reduce risk and build confidence.
And the childcare issue absolutely has to be tackled head-on.
Non-negotiable. We need a proper national creche grid, maybe using Anganwadis, but also public-private partnerships. Professionalize care workers. Extend paid maternity leave, especially the informal sector. Strengthen schemes like ICDS and Samarthya.
How do we make sure big infrastructure projects actually benefit women?
Through gender-responsive budgeting. Mandate it. Ensure projects include safe transport, proper sanitation, embed digital literacy training like PMGD Aisha into these projects.
And involve women in planning.
Critically. And conduct gender audits for things like smart cities or AME or T projects. Make sure they work for women.
What about getting more women in the informal sector into the formal economy with Social Security?
That's vital for security. Maybe a simplified gender-smart Udyam registration drive. Make it easier to access eShram, eSIC, NPS, and promote women-specific clusters, maybe under the One District, One Product scheme, to formalize supply chains.
And representation in governance. How do we boost that beyond the local level?
Well, quotas are one mechanism across government bodies, PSUs. Maybe linking panchayat funding incentives to how well they promote women's economic participation locally. And serious capacity building on gender budgeting for officials.
What role should the private sector play?
A huge one. Encourage or mandate things like paternity leave. Require gender audit disclosures under CSR or ESG frameworks. Incentivize returnship programs for women re-entering the workforce. Promote flexible work, offer childcare, maybe even a gender equity index for companies.
You mentioned digital access earlier. Could a unified platform help?
Potentially, yes. Imagine an Aadhaar-linked platform integrating welfare schemes, credit access, skilling info, insurance, all in one place. It could streamline things, reduce leakages, provide personalized advice, leverage fintech and those women-led CSEs for delivery.
Aligning with Digital India.
Precisely.
And lastly, making planning more local and gender-focused.
Yes, decentralize it. Develop gender action plans at local levels, genuinely incorporating inputs from Mahila Sabha's SHGs, use data from time use surveys, NFHS, SECC to tailor plans to local realities, co-create solutions.
This has been incredibly thorough. We've covered the drivers, the significant ongoing challenges, and a whole range of potential solutions. It's clear this requires sustained effort on many fronts.
Absolutely. It's not a single fix issue.
And for our listeners, particularly UPSC aspirants, Hopefully, this deep dive provides that crucial context for understanding India's development trajectory. This isn't a static issue. It keeps following the development.
Indeed. And remember the stakes. Empowering women economically isn't just about fairness, it's critical for growth. Some estimates suggest India could add $770 billion to its GDP by 2025 just by advancing women's equality.
And it aligns directly with global goals.
Yes, SDG 5 on gender equality and SDG 8 on decent work and economic growth.
So, a final thought for our listeners, especially those aiming for roles in governance. Considering everything we've discussed, the drivers, challenges, potential solutions, what specific policy interventions do you think hold the most promise right now for truly accelerating women-led development in India's incredibly diverse landscape? Something to ponder.
Definitely worth reflecting on. Analyze the trade-offs, the implementation challenges, form your own informed view.
Absolutely. If you found this deep dive useful for your prep, please do hit like, subscribe for more discussions like this, and drop a comment below. Any questions, thoughts, disagreements, we want to hear them.
Your engagement really helps us shape these conversations.
This deep dive drew on analysis published in the Business Standard. Thanks for tuning in to the Deep Dive.
See you next time.